Don't ask me
Wow,
why.
that makes
It was just
no
very
sense.
relaxing, and I was on a relaxing vacation. The resort I was staying with, they had like a whole big like playlist of stuff like in the rooms. And one night, get back, and there's like bossa nova playing, and I got really into it. That's what I'm doing right now. I know it's not what you expected. That's right. Girl from Ipanema.
Damn. Nice job. Well, best to you, best to your family. Nah, man. Yeah, no kidding. Join the club on that one. But you know what?
A couple years ago, I was to put on some Public Enemy, so now I need something more mellow.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And then if you say Public Enemy, people are going to say, who? Nah, they won't. I'm just kidding.
Oh, man, that's even older, honestly.
No, I know. That's when it really hurts, when you throw down with your cool groups and people are like, oh, yeah, I saw them at the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Yeah. I think my dad had an old CD somewhere in the closet.
And then people are like, what's a CD? All right, Patrick, got to keep my head up, man. Like Chuck D said this to me on the first episode of the Revamp podcast that we did. He said, you have to fight gravity and you have to fight being horizontal. Keep your body moving. So I take that close to heart. Hope to get younger every year. And hey, man, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And now, as promised, some choice words about Aly Raisman. Can't stop, won't stop. So Aly Raisman isn't stopping, and that is great news for anyone who wants the powerful to be held to account or believes that the Me Too movement in sports is just barely beginning. The gold medalist who went public with accusations of abuse against one-time USA Gymnastics and Michigan State doctor Larry Nassar is now suing the United States Olympic Committee for negligence, saying that they provided no oversight or intervention as Nassar assaulted hundreds of athletes under the guise of medical treatment. Raisman wants to know whether the USOC ignored Nassar out of benign neglect or perhaps for more malignant reasons. Warnings about Nassar, let's not forget, were reportedly bandied about for years, although the USOC and USA Gymnastics put their heads in the sand until an expose published by the Indianapolis Star in 2016. Support your local media. The known facts tell us that even if you give the USOC every benefit of the doubt, more people were hurt precisely because they chose silence. Raisman's lawsuit puts it out there in plain and brutal language, saying that the USOC, quote, at the highest levels of its organization, end quote, knew what was happening and looked the other way in order to keep the Olympic trains running on time. As Raisman said in a statement to the media that accompanied the lawsuit, my highest priority has been to push for change, so future generations of athletes will be safer. It has become painfully clear that these organizations have no intention of properly addressing this problem. After all this time, the USOC remains unwilling to conduct a full investigation, and without a solid understanding of how this happened, it is delusional to think sufficient changes can be implemented. I refuse to wait any longer for these organizations to do the right thing. It is my hope that the legal process will hold them accountable and enable the change that is so desperately needed. End quote. Now, what makes the timing of Raisman's actions so important is that she made the choice to throw down the lawsuit just days after the post-Winter Olympics resignation of USOC head Scott Blackmun. While Blackmun's resignation was chalked up to legitimate health reasons, there is no question that his exit was thought by the USOC as another way, along with the mass dismissal of the USA Gymnastics Board, to publicly turn the page on Nassar and display some kind of veneer of good governance. Raisman is making clear that the page cannot be turned until there is accountability, that there cannot be peace in the Olympic Village until there is justice, or this will repeat itself again and again. This is hardly the first time that Raisman has performed the difficult task of linking Nassar's abuse with the bystander complicity of the USOC. At Nassar's sentencing, a seemingly infinite line of survivors spoke to how Nassar's abuse derailed their lives, resulting in Nassar receiving a sentence that, between child pornography and assault convictions, totals 300 years. But Raceman, in part due to her gold medal fame, and in part due to the fact that she was not expected at the trial, sent shockwaves by her presence. Those shockwaves became an earthquake when she stood up, and in addition to calling out Nasser, condemned the absence of the USOC at the sentencing, saying, "Why have I and the others here probably not heard anything from the leadership of the USOC? Why has the US Olympic Committee been silent? Why isn't the USOC here right now?" With this lawsuit, we can be assured that we won't have to settle for eventual congressional hearings or have to stomach whatever the USOC's, quote, independent investigation delivers. Instead, they will be held to account by an athlete whose only goal is forcing them to actually assess how they allowed an abuser access to their athletes and then chose to do nothing. We'll be back, but first, a quick word from The Nation magazine. Look, we need alternative media right now. We need to get news out into people's hands. The Nation magazine has been doing it for 150 years, and we ain't stopping. Can't stop, won't stop. Support The Nation magazine. It is more needed than ever. Read my stuff, read John Nichols, read Collier Meyerson. I mean, we're talking some amazing, amazing writers doing the best work on the political left. Go to thenation.com/subscribe. That's thenation.com/subscribe. And now it's time for the Just Stand Up Award. Just stand up and just sit your ass down. Just Stand Up Award goes to Minnesota Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve, who put out a tremendous tweet throwing shade at The Athletic, which is kind of like the new pay sports site that everybody's talking about. They've gobbled up some incredible journalists. They do terrific coverage. Their slogan is fall in love with the sports page again. It's a fascinating model for how to get paid in this journalistic climate. But Cheryl Reeve, the coach of the Lynx, makes a good point. She says, things that make you go, why would a subscriber-based sports medium that claims full access to all sports limit its earnings potential by not covering women's sports? The Athletic does just that, and it's bad business. Hashtag tired of the bias. Thank you, Cheryl Reeve. If you're going to be a sports site, then you need to cover women's sports. Otherwise, you are chopping yourself off financially, in addition to the fact that it's sexist and immoral. But on the financial side, what The Athletic is trying to do right now is show the world how we can financially sustain top-quality sports journalism. That's its mission, and frankly, it's a laudable mission given how confused the current media climate is. But for them to have that as their mission and not cover women's sports, man, it's like hobbling yourself before you even get out of the starting gate. And it's a damn shame, and hopefully they'll correct that. And I think the voices of people like Cheryl Reeve are the voices that push for that kind of necessary change. In Women's History Month, no less. The Sit Your Ass Down Award.
Sit your ass down.
And this entire one is courtesy of the reporting of Lindsay Gibbs from Think Progress, who did a terrific job on this, former guest of the show. Sit Your Ass Down goes to Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who actually, as Lindsay pointed out, directed his constituents to express outrage at a women's basketball player for not standing during the national anthem. She's a Wisconsin player, not an Iowa player, but heaven forfend she did not stand during a road game against Iowa. So here's a senator of the United States, someone who's 198 years old, directing his constituents to go after this person on social media. Her name is Marsha Howard, and really think of this as a second Just Stand Up Award, because Lindsay was able to interview Marsha Howard, and I want to read to you what Marsha Howard said about why she was not standing for the anthem. Check this out. She said, I have not only been protesting the brutal acts of gun violence, but also the improper attainment of justice and liberty for all, and the understated emphasis on racialization and inequality of people of color. Systemic racism is important to me because it affects me, my family, my culture, and the systematic oppression we have endured. Facts prove the systematic oppression and the fight to keep people of color in the back with their mouths shut. It's not shut up and dribble, bam, that phrase is becoming iconic, when we're out doing for the community. Whenever we stand up or speak on topics that relate to us about racial disparities, though, it's always shut up and dribble. And the last thing that she said, this other quote that I just have to read to you. Again, props to Lindsay Gibbs at Think Progress for getting these quotes. This is what Marsha Howard said. What inspired this protest was having a platform that I can use to speak for myself and others who aren't given the same opportunity. The voiceless Americans. Bam. This is a college student who gets what these protests are all about in a way that U.S. senators do not. And don't think that's by accident. We'll be right back, but first, a very important quick word for Edge of Sports listeners. Yo, we are starting a Patreon page. All you got to do is go to www.patreon.com/edgeofsportspod, where you can become someone who helps keep this podcast going. We've got different categories by which you can give to help us keep on doing the work that we're doing. Look, I never thought I would need a Patreon page, but the fact of the matter is this. That intersection of sports and politics has just exploded in the last year, and we want to do more. We want to take the show on the road. We want to make more merch. We want to do more stuff. And to do that, we need your help. And depending on how much you give, we're going to be giving something back. I mean, whether it is a signed book I've written, whether it is a bi-monthly mailbag, whether it is a t-shirt, all of these things are available, and we're doing it because we want to support the continuance of this podcast. Look, this podcast will always be free. You don't got to give anything, but if you appreciate the content we give, please go to patreon.com/edgeofsportspod. And now, back to the podcast. And now, before I wrap up the show, and I've got some special thank yous, and you're going to want to listen to that, I have a question for everybody out there, and I'm hoping people could call in with their answers. Are you going to watch the NCAA tournament this year? Why or why not? Are you going to watch March Madness, given the cascade of scandals that are going on? Well, you're not going to watch it anyway, given the fact that these scandals are nothing new, even if this is the most heightened example of what we've seen. Give us a call at 401-426-3343. That's 401-426-EDGE. Let us know what you think. We would love to play some of your answers on the air. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to this week's show. Before I give any credits or anything of the sort, I want to give a shout-out to our patrons that have given $5 or more in the last cycle. Really do appreciate all of you. These are the people who wanted their names said over the air, and I'm more than happy to do it. And if anybody else wants to help, just go to patreon.com/edgeofsportspod. So thank you, Allison Eady. Thank you, Aaron Maiden. Thank you, Dylan Goings. Thank you, Parashar Bise. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Gary Nelson. Thank you, Cindy Shambin. Thank you, Eric Geist. Thank you, Stephen Wobble. Thank you, Tal Levy. Thank you, Carly Anderson. Thank you, Lucy Anderson. Thank you, Doris Clark. Thank you, Bruce Anton. Thank you, Deepak Batal. And now a special thank you, because it's a happy birthday thank you, to Morgan Wallace, who teaches sports and society at a high school, and he got some of his students to tweet me. So happy birthday, Morgan Wallace. Kelly is pretty awesome that she sees this as a birthday present, at least from my perspective. But we really appreciate you and every listener who we just mentioned. So happy birthday, Morgan, and your students tweeted me some really good stuff. So thank you so much. Also, hey, now that we're wrapping up the show, thanks to my producer, David Tigaboo. Thank you to everybody out there listening. Thank you to The Nation Magazine. If you want to listen to back episodes of the show, just go to edgeofsportspodcast.com. If you want to leave comments, leave a rating at iTunes, Stitcher, or your podcast app of choice. All of that makes actually a huge difference in terms of how they promote the show. For everybody out there listening, stay frosty. We are out of here. Peace.